I've been reflecting on when I left college, trying to remember what I wish I'd known back then and what lessons I've learned along the way. I wondered if maybe I should tell you to follow your dreams and pursue things you're passionate about, and then maybe share stories like the time I was hit by a car and dropped out of college with no qualifications, or how I suffered from post-traumatic stress after years of working as a conflict journalist, but turned my life around and am now running my own company, creating virtual reality training for people who work in hostile environments. I wondered if telling you these stories might show you that people are resilient and how if you get knocked down, you can get up again. Maybe sharing my stories would inspire you to keep moving forward, even when it's hard to know which path to take. But looking back at myself 21 years ago, when I was sitting where you are now, has not been a particularly comfortable experience. I realised that it wouldn't really have mattered what people told me. The reality is I probably wouldn't have listened. For example, when I was run over, people told me, "This will make you stronger." But I didn't want to hear that. I was angry, really angry. My life had been knocked off course. All my friends finished college and went off to start the next phase of their lives, but I was left behind and I hated that. The annoying thing is, people were right. Surviving that accident did make me stronger. I took a year out to recover, but then I came back to WQE, or QE as it was when I was there, and I did my A-levels, and I actually got much better grades than I was predicted the first time round. But I had to learn that lesson myself. Being told it wasn't the thing that helped me. Living through it was what made it sink in, and even then it took a bit of time. So I'm here to tell you that you don't need to listen to me. And actually, knowing that if you're anything like I was, you probably won't be listening to me, certainly made this speech a little easier to write. But seriously, the person you need to listen to is yourself. It took me a really long time to realize this, but one of the most important skills you'll need to succeed in life is the confidence to trust your own intuition. Intuition, gut instinct, those moments of clear and immediate truth can be a real driving force in life. I remember exactly how I felt almost 20 years ago to this day when the 9/11 terror attacks happened. I was at university, just starting my second year of a psychology degree, but as I watched the Twin Towers fall, every part of me wanted to be there, to witness what was happening firsthand, to try and make sense of it, to understand why. So I followed my gut, not to New York, but to the journalism department, and I switched my degree and took the first step in my journalism career. I also remember how I felt when I was working at the Associated Press a few years later, and a company-wide email was sent out saying there was to be a freeze on new hires and no opportunities for promotion. I was working on the Asia desk from London, but I had my sights set on a job in Bangkok. And in that moment, I knew that if I wanted to move to Thailand, it was up to me to make it happen. It was at the height of the global financial crisis, and people told me I was crazy to quit my job, but I trusted my intuition. I handed in my notice, I booked my flight to Thailand, and I took the first step in my career as a freelance foreign correspondent. In the age of rational thinking, intuition can often be dismissed as fallible, even whimsical, but journalists rely a lot on intuition. You'll hear journalists talking about following their nose to find a good story, and war reporters trust their gut and know when it's time to leave the front lines. I spent 10 years working as a foreign correspondent in Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and Europe. I never considered myself to be a war reporter, but I was a reporter who covered war. I should say I did not have pink hair back then. I reported from the front lines of Syria, Iraq, Gaza, Libya, Eastern Ukraine, Mali, and the Central African Republic. Over the years, I learned to trust my gut and to know when enough was enough, but it took practice, and I didn't always get it right. And so that's my second and final piece of advice. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be embarrassed by your failures. Learn from them and start again. We live in a world where a lot of value is put on success. Making mistakes or failing is often ridiculed, but I firmly believe that failure is not always a backward movement. Sometimes we can fail upwards and unlock opportunities we didn't even know existed. I failed upwards when I took a step back from journalism, although at the time I didn't see it like that. At the time, I felt like a failure. Being a journalist had been my whole life for more than 15 years, but I'd reached the point where I couldn't do it anymore. I spent years traveling the world, and I feel incredibly privileged to have reported from so many countries and to have spoken with people, many in desperate situations, who didn't have the luxury of leaving like I did. But in the end, it got too much. For years, I suffered from post-traumatic stress, triggered by seeing my husband and cameraman Olivier clinging onto life after he was hit by a rocket-propelled grenade while we were reporting from Libya. And then compounded by finding myself repeatedly in situations where my life was threatened and witnessing significant and sustained human suffering. So I stopped. I stopped being a journalist, and I felt like a failure. But when you start to see everything that happens in your life as an opportunity to grow, failure no longer has quite the same meaning. I now run Headset with my long-term journalism collaborator, Ella. We had the idea to use virtual reality to better prepare journalists for the physical and emotional threats they face in the field. In 3 short years, we've grown Headset from a seed of an idea to a company that employs 10 people and has won almost £500,000 in government funding. And this year, I was selected as one of Innovate UK's Women in Innovation Award winners. Running a tech startup has been a really steep learning curve, and I've made a fair amount of mistakes along the way. But every misstep is an opportunity to grow. I'm not proud of my mistakes, but I am proud of taking chances. I'm proud of bouncing back from failures. I'm proud of continuing to experiment despite the setbacks, and I'm proud to say that I tried. So students, as you take the next steps in your lives, these are my 2 pieces of advice. Learn to trust your instinct. Those sudden flashes of deep insight or nagging feelings of unease are always worth listening to. And secondly, don't be afraid to fail. You will fail, we all do. It's what we do next that matters. I was looking around for an inspirational quote to leave you with. Steve Jobs, Albert Einstein, and Marilyn Monroe were all on the shortlist. But in the end, the most fitting quote I found was right in front of me, here on the WQE website. This is your future. Be extraordinary.